Hi, my name is Dania Akkad. I'm a journalist with Middle East Eye. On Friday, the Foreign Affairs Committee released its report on the Israel-Palestine conflict. We sat down with Emily Thornberry to find out whether she thinks the UK will indeed recognize the state of Palestine, how she squares the export of UK-made parts for the F-35 with the use of the fighter jet in the war in Gaza, and whether she thinks Israel would indeed dismantle the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. One of the most urgent recommendations in your report is for the dismantling of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Given that it was Israel's and the US's answer to the lack of aid getting to Palestinians, what confidence do you have that the UK can pressure Israel to dismantle it? And what levers should the UK government use to pressure Israel to do that?
So as far as I can tell, the Prime Minister is going to be seeing the President of the United States this weekend. And there's a whole lot of things that we need to discuss, obviously. I mean, there are other things, So there's the price at which we can sell British steel to the United States. There's Ukraine. But the most urgent thing is what's happening in Gaza. We can't have any more children starving to death. Anybody else shot when just simply queuing up for aid. I mean, it's just completely and totally unacceptable. And actually, Donald Trump has shown in the past, when he appreciates the human costs of what's going on, he can turn on a penny and go, this won't do, it must stop. I think this is an opportunity for the British Prime Minister to do this, and maybe we will end up with a phone call from Turnberry Golf Course to Israel. And to be honest, nobody else is going to stop Netanyahu apart from President Trump. I mean, President Trump stopped those planes in midair that were going off to Iran to bomb Iran again, and it was Trump that stopped it. So I do think actually right at this moment we have a golden opportunity to say to Donald Trump, look, whatever kind of goodwill there was behind doing this, whatever the argument was, it's not working. And actually it's not working because you can't have 4 aid points instead of 400, which is what there was before. You've got to take aid to people. You can't expect them to kind of come across Gaza Strip. What about single mothers? They can't get, all the arguments. We have to have something which is under the auspices of the United Nations. And actually there's a lot more skill in giving out aid than people clearly thought. We need to get those who are willing to help to come back in, and we must feed people right now. And frankly, the other system just doesn't work. Let's quietly walk away from it.
If you're Keir Starmer and you're having that conversation, beyond an emotional plea, what leverage do we have? What could he use to kind of?
I think it's just actually when it comes to international relationships, quite often it's personal, and particularly with this president it is. And they seem to get on. So it is a question of kind of getting him to stop, getting him to focus, saying to him, look, this is simply terrible what's going on. Have you seen some of these photos? Have you seen some of the things that's happening? This is what's going on right now. The American system's not working. Or you don't even necessarily have to say that. You can just say, you have to tell Netanyahu you must open the gates and let others introduce aid as well. It isn't just, this system which isn't working hugely well.
I want to ask you about Palestinian recognition. This was a majority of the committee said the UK should recognize Palestine immediately.
Yes.
And I wonder, what hope or expectation you have that your recommendation is going to be taken up maybe even as soon as Monday or Tuesday at this conference coming up.
Well, I would want it to be taken up on Monday because there is a conference in New York under the auspices of Saudi Arabia. I know that the initial talk around it was that there was some hope that France and Britain at the same time would recognize Palestine. And it has a power, because they were the countries behind Sykes-Picot, the secret agreement that carved up the Middle East in the first place. For those two countries to come together and say, we have to have a state of Palestine, we recognize a state of Palestine. Obviously it won't be enough by itself, but we'll come on to that in a minute. And if that doesn't work, if the British government doesn't feel that now is the moment, there's another one, which is September, that the United Nations, when the leaders get together at the United Nations in New York, so we'll be pressing really hard for the recognition to happen next week. If it doesn't happen next week, then we're going to do September. We're going to keep going at it because, as I say, it's not enough by itself, right? it is only symbolic in some ways. It has an effect in that I think it will help to underline to the Israeli people just how isolated Netanyahu has made Israel, and how so many long-standing friends such as Britain and France are just losing patience, how it has to stop, how we have to move on. But I also think that it's I would want to see it as a first step towards Britain getting back into the ring and saying, right, let's play our part in, there are so many countries in the world who want to be involved in ensuring that there is a proper peace settlement, I mean, the Arab nations we know have been really proactive in this, but I think it helps to have some Western countries involved too. You cover the waterfront a bit more, and I think working together and there being a united international voice that says, this is the only alternative that we know about. Has anybody got any better ideas? And because you don't get anything serious out of Israel. We've tried, we've talked to many people, you don't get anything serious. And I just don't think that that Donald Trump and his entourage have really stopped and thought about it sufficiently well. But we can. I mean, we can do that heavy lifting and then give to Donald Trump a piece wrapped up in a pink bow and say to him, we now need you, because we can't do it by ourselves. We need to have the man who has more strength than 10 presidents. You will have an influence on Israel, and you can get this done in a way that all the other presidents who thought they could, who all failed, but you can do it. And you need to make it clear to Israel that as the biggest long-standing friend, still standing almost, we're telling you, you have to move forward. We need to rebuild Gaza. We can't rebuild Gaza without there being hope, without there being a path to peace, without there being a path to a two-state solution. There has to be movement. We have to find all these things. We know what all these things are. And one of the things I think that Britain also plays is in terms of bringing people together in the way that we did in Northern Ireland. It's in terms of peace building, nation building. We have those sorts of skills, so I think that we should be there offering that. And anything else that we can do, basically. But I think that it's been, for too long, people have just parked it as an issue, as just, it's too hard, we could do other things, it'd be easier to do other things, let's not waste any more political capital, any more time on this. Well, no, we have to, we absolutely have to. And as I say, for Britain, it begins with recognition. And then there are other countries, and particularly Arab countries in the world, who, whenever I speak to them, just say, why isn't Britain recognising? We can show as a gesture of goodwill of, we know what it is that we're doing, where we're going, what we're doing, why we're doing it. We're doing it because we want to have two states and we want to have peace. Not just in Israel and Palestine, but in the region more generally, because there won't be peace in the region more generally without peace in Palestine. We all know this.
Well, let's see if it happens.
Let's see if it happens. Listen, I mean, if I wasn't an optimist, I wouldn't be in politics. What's the point? You have to believe that you can find a political solution to things. Otherwise, you might as well do something else.
On the US, on the F-35s, how do you square the F-35 carve-out with the role that the F-35s play in international peace and security?
Yeah. So, it's a good question. So I think the first thing is that Britain is right not to sell arms to Israel that can be used offensively and can be used in Gaza. It's a moot issue whether or not we should be selling arms that Israel could use to defend itself. I personally think that we should be supporting Israel to defend itself, but not selling them arms that they can use offensively. Then there's a question of the F-35s. So the F-35s, as I understand it, Britain has said we're not going to sell any spare parts to Israel. But what we are part of is a larger supply chain of F-35s that are built in America. So how can we stop selling the parts on the F-35s? It's not then up to us whether some of those aircraft get sold to Israel. My personal view is I can't see why we just can't put a label on the box. Just say not for use in Israel. We're not allowing our parts to be used for F-35s that are being sold to Israel. I mean, that's my view. And actually what the report is saying is, could the British government explain? I mean, there's been a court case, so legally they can do it, according to but that's not really what the point is. The point is it's politically. And I think Holland has had the same challenge. So we'll see.
As I understand with the F-35s, part of the reason why the UK can't put its stamp on it or can't is that the US effectively owns the spare parts once they go into the global pool, and they don't really track them. So there's an issue, I think, with the MOU that the UK signed in the first place. And I wonder if that's something you think is getting planted in the minds of other MPs, whether in the future when these MOUs are made, this is something to think about. Maybe we're going to be on a different side at some point.
Yeah. Good point. Well, I mean, at the moment, the cross-party group of MPs said, let's just get a proper political explanation from the government as to why they've made the decision that they have. So that's where we are.
Right. You will have seen Kit Malthouse's intervention in Parliament. Maybe you will, maybe you haven't. Okay. Yeah. In which he warned the Foreign Secretary that he was headed for The Hague if he continued to be in his inaction with Gaza. And I wondered, as a Labour MP and as the Foreign Affairs Committee chair, whether you share Malthouse's concern that if the UK does not follow its obligations under international law, that there's a trajectory here where leadership could end up criminally prosecuted.
Well, if that was the case, but I don't think it is. I think an important part of it is not selling arms to Israel that can be used offensively, and doing everything that you can in order to ensure that a possible genocide, it's not for you to decide whether there's a genocide or not, is up for a court, but there has to be a judgment made by the British government as to whether or not there's a risk of it. And if there's a risk, then we have to do everything that we can in order to stop that. And I think that, the British government, listen, you'll have to ask the British government, but my view is that that thought process has been gone through, actually. And if I'm honest, I thought that Kit Malthouse's intervention was just extremely emotional and not really very well thought through. And he might have felt better afterwards, but I don't think that it kind of helps. I'm sorry I hope that doesn't sound too patronising, but I just disagree with it. I just thought, really. And frankly, there has been a big move in terms of what this Labour government has done compared to the government that he was supported of. So it kind of sits ill in his mouth anyway.
As a lawyer, I wondered if you're concerned if there's a broader danger to the rule of international law if we don't take a position on the ICJ advisory ruling.
So we're expecting the government to write back, to consider, they say they have considered it, but we expect them to put forward their considerations in public by writing their reaction to the ICJ's advisory opinion. And it's taken too long, and we've made that clear in the report. We want to see it. So the British government should put in the public realm, what its thinking is.
What do you think the holdup is?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's because things are moving so fast. Maybe it's because there's also a lot else that's going on. But it should do.
The government has halted trade talks with Israel, but you want to see more with the Israeli settlements.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you want to see?
What we want to see is, many of us on the committee, not everyone, but many of us, and I'm one of them, believes that there's a difference between Israel proper and the settlements, and we should make that difference clear when it comes to policy. So we should not be trading with the settlements, and we all agree on that. And we should be sanctioning companies that are involved in building settlements and facilitating the settlements. We should be making it clear that it is illegal, and we should not be trading with the settlements. And we should just be much stronger than we are at the moment. We've kind of, it's like one of the big things about the report, we say it again and again, is that the British government have done too little too late. And I think settlements is kind of one of them. And actually Alistair Burt, who was a former Middle East minister from the Conservatives, gave evidence to us, and it's his phrase, too little too late, and he particularly uses the settlements as an example. He just feels that we just should have done more about the settlements earlier than we have. Because in the end, as everybody knows, who read Middle East Eye, the settlements are built on the land that we expect to be able to be used by a Palestinian state. So it's not only illegal, it's it's undermining peace. And we really need to have been much stronger than we have been before now. And so we're calling, and unanimously calling, on, so that's Conservatives, Liberal and Labour, must be much harder on the settlements than we have been so far. And say we're sort of there, but we're not there, you know? I mean, again, I don't expect that to be something that's going to make a short-term difference, but we really should be in that position. We really should be much stronger than we are. And making it absolutely clear that when we say no settlements, we mean it.
Yeah, I think there was an exchange when Hamish Falconer was giving testimony.
Yeah.
You were asking him about products from Israeli settlements.
Yeah.
It's clear that there hasn't really been oversight of Israeli products being sold here in the UK.
No, I agree.
Which was surprising.
Yeah, and I got into a lot of trouble for saying what I do think, which is I will go out of my way to support Israel, but it's the Israel I want. It's the Israel I want, which is a peaceful Israel, and is an Israel that is not involved in settlements and not involved in what's happening in Gaza. I want there to be two states, which means I want there to be an Israel and I want there to be a Palestine. I will support Israel. I will buy goods from Israel, but I won't buy goods from the settlements. And I think that's completely consistent. That's what I've always said, and will continue to do so.
My final question.
Yeah.
On the F-35s, the High Court made a ruling a couple of weeks ago,
Yeah.
and essentially they kicked this decision, they rejected the challenge that was made to the selling of the F-35 parts and putting them in the global pool that end up in Israel. And they kind of kicked the decision back to what they called the executive, which is obviously democratically accountable to and to the electorate. And I wonder if, with the prescription of Palestine Action, if the perception might be to the public that an avenue they have to protest, for example, the F-35 judgment, has been shut down and there's a chilling effect. What would you say to that perception?
Well, I think it's wrong. So I think what really the court was saying was the legal challenge that has been made, which is that international law should be applied directly in English law, they didn't agree with. And they said that's not really that this isn't going to work. And there were lots and lots of international law that was being cited, but they were saying actually as a principle, international law is not applied within the English court system. It's a political thing. And so it's for the executive to decide. So it's for the government to decide whether it's right or wrong to do this, but it's not a question of it's a breach of international law, therefore the English courts ought to force the government to do it.
And the government had been saying it was an issue for the courts, so it's sort of this...
Well, yeah, so the government said it was an issue for the courts in terms of the legality, and what we've said as a committee is, well, yes, that's all very interesting, but it's a political decision and we want you to explain to us why you've made that decision politically. Palestine Action is not, and does not, represent the full breadth of opposition to what is happening in Gaza. You can, and you should, write to members of parliament. You should make your voice clear. You should be out on the streets demonstrating. You can do that peacefully and clearly. Some of the things that I'm told Palestine Action have done is on the other side of the law. So the fact that the government has taken the view that they have in relation to Palestine Action is not a matter of having a chilling effect. People can, and I'm sure will, continue to make clear what their views are. I mean, the views in Britain about Palestine are very strong. People believe it very strongly. It's visceral, how unfair they believe that it is, and they are not backwards in coming forwards. In my experience, I don't think Palestine Action is relevant.
Are you frustrated by how long this is taking, this Gaza war, and how long it's taking for anyone to do anything to stop it?
So I first went out to Israel and Palestine in the late 70s. My half-sisters were given presents by Father Christmas, who arrived on Gaza Beach on the back of a camel. And I've been going back to Israel and Palestine ever since. My father was in the United Nations. And every time I've gone, it's got worse. And it breaks my heart. And of course, it's really, when it comes to this current conflict, it's really frustrating and distressing to see what's happening and to see just long periods where nothing seems to happen, apart from more and more people die. it's dreadful. It's dreadful to see it. But I have always, throughout the whole period, always said what I want to do as a politician is to try to do anything that I can that will actually make a difference. It's not for me, even though I want to spend my time simply expressing how angry or upset or distressed I am. It's my job as a politician to try to find a way through it and to find what pressure points I can and what power we might have to try to push it forward and to measure everything that I do against, is this getting a two-state solution closer? And it's really hard. And the temptation to just look away and just go, this is just too hard, let's just do something else, is a real one. And is one that, far too many politicians across the world have decided. But now, in all the distress and the destruction and the death, maybe maybe this is the time when people will finally take this seriously and actually do something about it.
Thank you so much for your time.
Not at all.